WrestleMania 9, terrible. WrestleMania 10, very good. WrestleMania 11, terrible. WrestleMania 12, very good. WrestleMania 13, terrible. I don't know if this show ultimately goes down with the ranks of 9 or 11, but it really isn't that far off. And, when I go back and I watch WrestleMania 13, I want to like this show, and I want to try and defend this show, but it just has this different type of vibe about it. Maybe more than any WrestleMania ever. It just has this vibe about it to me that I've never really been able to shake. When everybody talks about the Attitude Era, I've talked about 97 being one of my favorite years in the history of the WWF. And yeah, for some reason, WrestleMania 13 was terrible. And there are even some matches that when you look at them on the card, you're like, well, that couldn't have been that bad, or that couldn't have been that bad. There was just something off about this show. It just didn't work. And it even brought down some of the matches. Like at the very beginning, you kick off with this 4-team elimination match or whatever it was to determine the future #1 tag title contender. And this match was just kind of, just didn't work for me. Headbangers won, that's all fine and good, but, it's something it maybe should have been better than it was. I don't know, but it just wasn't very good. That's all I can really say about it. It just is something you'll never really remember. Now, the next match you remember, but you remember it for the stupidity of the gimmicks involved. You're talking about the Sultan, and you should know by now who the Sultan eventually became. And it's very striking to see who the Sultan was just a couple of years later. And then you look at the other individual, the Intercontinental Champion, Rocky Maivia, as this kind of vanilla sliced bread, hokey ass Samoan white meat babyface. Oh my God. The representation of how Vince had really gotten out of touch. And Vince really didn't understand the talents that he had and the ways at this time to really accentuate the talents of the performers that he had to the best of his abilities. I mean, Rocky Maivia versus the Sultan. And you even had the Iron Sheik and Mr. Bob fucking Backlund in the corner of the Sultan. And ultimately, this match was bad. It was terrible. You looked at two incredibly dumb dick gimmicks. Wasn't a great match. And then you just kept focusing on the two really dumb dick gimmicks. And it was just off. Which, like I said, is so much about this show. Now, a match that I think does get slept on a little bit on this card is Hunter Hearst Helmsley with his bodyguard Chyna taking on Goldust. I do think that this match gets a little swept under the rug in terms of the fact that it actually was a somewhat quality match. Now with Hunter Hearst Helmsley, after getting squashed at WrestleMania 12 and then the curtain call and getting squashed, not winning King of the Ring and this and that, WWF is starting to get back on the board with him a little bit. But even here, it was just like something was missing with this match. I always maybe felt that Goldust should have went over Triple H at WrestleMania 13. Maybe that was just me. Or maybe it was a get back for him. They're like, he's had to eat shit, like the taste of it and everything else. Based on what happened at WrestleMania 12, we're going to give him one here. I don't really know. Now, the next match, you have your tag title match with Owen Hart and the British Bulldog taking on Mankind Invader. And again, you look at the names, you're like, those are 4 Hall of Fame talents right there. Those are 4 guys that should be able to go out there and have a really good damn match. Just, again, I don't even know if I could fully quantify this, or I don't know if what I'm trying to say is tangible, but there was just something off about this. There just was. It's kind of like when you had freaking, what's the way of trying to put this? It's like when you had the Chicago street fight. You had Legion of Doom going against the Nation of Domination. And again, this is something, you're in the Chicago area. You have the LOD who are billed from the Chicago area and all of this and all of that. And it should seem like something that really works. And it just kind of really didn't. And that's what I look at so much with this show is it seems like some things in theory would work, and they just really didn't. And maybe part of it is the fact that this was uh, one of the poorest drawing WrestleManias of all time. What I mean is that this is the only WrestleMania in history, I believe, that didn't actually sell out the venue ahead of time. And maybe that's just one part of the whole puzzle that just kind of hangs over this like a dark cloud. Maybe it was the fact that Vince McMahon was still on commentary here and he just had no fucking business being on commentary. I don't really know. Maybe it was corny ass Todd Pettengill and even cornier ass Michael P.S. Hayes as Doc Hendricks, an 80s caricature of himself. I don't know. It was like you sat there and you had something going. Oh, like even on the IC title match, there's a freaking honky tonk man, excuse me, on commentary talking about how he's the greatest intercontinental champ of all time and Rocky Maivia is no honky tonk man. It just didn't fucking work. It just didn't. But there was one match that really, really, truly worked on this show. And it is one of the all-time great WrestleMania matches. And one of the reasons it's the all-time great WrestleMania matches is it really had just about everything going into it. It had storyline heading into it. You had real heat and animosity there in terms of the way it was projected on screen anyways. You had a more established talent versus an aggressive young up-and-coming talent. You know, there's just so many things going for this. And this all goes back to when Bret left the company after WrestleMania 12, took some time off, wanted to go do some primetime soap opera type stuff and movies and whatever. And now he's ready to come back. In his return match, he chooses Stone Cold Steve Austin in a number one contenders match. And this was really the beginning of the feud. And, this was a chance where Bret Hart was really extending a chance to Stone Cold Steve Austin, if you will, and saying, I'm going to make this guy something. Now I'm going to make him a big time deal. And when you look at this match in a card that is largely forgettable, this match is truly timeless. This is a submission match. You bring in an MMA legend, a UFC star like Ken Shamrock, who you're bringing into the company to be a full-time wrestler for you. He's the special guest referee. So many things worked about this match. It was incredible. Every year when I go back and I want to watch the old WrestleManias, one of the first matches I pop on is this one because it is one of the best. The story that it told between the two was phenomenal. The way that they booked this finish was incredible and ingenious. To sit there and have Bret Hart go over, but to do it in a way that made Stone Cold Steve Austin look like the real winner was incredible. And I mean, like you said, at the end, like I said, at the end of '96 and through the beginning of '97, these guys had a really good piece of business and feud. This goes to the Royal Rumble '97, where Austin gets eliminated, but nobody sees it, so he ends up eliminating Bret, and he goes on to win the '97 Rumble. And then afterwards, things get all screwy, and then you get to this moment here. But you did that great double switch. You were able to take Austin and establish him as the toughest SOB on the planet and establish him as a legit tough badass, but make him an admirable individual and one to be looked up to and respected because of the fact that he didn't give up. He would rather pass out from the pain than he would give up. And there's something very admirable about that and something that's very easy to relate to for people. And the way that they went through this match, and you enter with Austin being the heel, that the crowd is really getting behind, and you're sensing something different is going on here. This is a new type of star, a new type of future player, top player at that for the WWF. And then you've got this guy here, the more buttoned down, serious, respectable guy in a Bret Hart. And as the match goes along, Bret starts working more and more heel. Austin works more and more face. To the point now, by the end of the match, you have executed a completely perfect double switch. Bret is now heel. Austin is now face. And now you are off to the races in 1997. To me, this is easily one of the 10 greatest WrestleMania matches of all time. It's definitely one of the 5 greatest WrestleMania matches of all time. And if anything, its profile gets elevated because it was so great that it was able to shine above a bunch of other garbage that was WrestleMania 13. A timeless match. A truly, truly timeless match. That's how it's done. And hats off to both of them because it is an all-time classic. And then you get to the main event, the no disqualification WWF Championship match. Psycho Sid versus The Undertaker. This was just all kind of screwy because you got Shawn on commentary, Bret coming on, just a whole bunch of garbage with this match, frankly. I've always heard stories over the years about Psycho Sid shit his pants during this match. I don't know if it's true or not, but because it's Psycho Sid and because he's awesome like that, I would like to assume that he worked most of this match after having sharded himself and shitting his pants. Let's just pretend that he did. It elevates the profile of this. And actually, even though I know we referred to this pay-per-view as kind of a one-match show, I really don't think that this main event title match was all that bad. And when you look at it ultimately, Taker goes on to beat Psycho Sid, who had beaten Shawn Michaels at Survivor Series 96. And you get to this here, and it's like, you had all this scramble trying to figure out who was going to go where in terms of the WrestleMania main event. Well, here it is. And Taker wins, and he becomes the champion for the first time in over 5 years. And that's a great moment, and I think a good finish to the show. But it just felt like you were missing something. There was just something missing. It was like the WWE maybe was starting to understand and they were starting to catch up with the times, but then they would have those moments where they were kind of falling back, even here in early 1997, into some bad old habits and thinking that they knew what really needed to happen. And frankly, they didn't have a damn clue. And that primarily blame goes to Vince and Kane McMahon. And you see that playing out here. You could see where the WWF was going and needed to go. But you could also see where Vince McMahon was trying to keep the WWF because he wasn't ready to fully take it into that direction. And you saw that here. Austin Bret was one example of where the WWF was going and where it needed to go. But everything else, it seemed like revolving this show was kind of like, no, we need to keep it here. We don't want to go there. Austin and Bret, they did it. And that's why I think this match is so timeless and the rest of the show, frankly, is so forgettable. This is not as nearly as bad of a show as WrestleMania 9. No, it's not. This is not nearly as bad of a show as a WrestleMania 11. No, it's not. I'd argue for this one being better than both of those by a mile. But it is still easily, to me, one of the 5 worst WrestleManias of all time, maybe in that top 3. Because again, when I go back and watch it, you're talking about the only WrestleMania in history that didn't sell out. And this is not like you're trying to sell out a 70 or 80,000 seat arena. You couldn't even sell out the Rosemont Horizon, in Rosemont, Illinois, in that Chicagoland area that is supposed to be a big hotbed for professional wrestling. In 1997, you couldn't even sell out a venue with less than 20,000 seats. It tells you all you need to know about where the WWF's business was during that time. And it shows in this WrestleMania, frankly. One of the worst of all time, even with it being elevated a little bit because of the all-time classic that was Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin in the submission match.